Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Where Work Meets Life. I'm very excited to be filming live here on Salt Spring Island in the studio of my podcast producer, Steve Rokosh, about the abundance code, busting the 7 money myths with Julie Ann Cairns. So let me tell you a little bit about this amazing woman. I heard her speaking on a podcast with Jane Atkinson, who has been a speaking coach of mine for my keynote speaking career. And I heard this episode and it really resonated with me. And I had been thinking about abundance in my own life and how to cultivate more of it. So I heard Julie Ann talking to Jane Atkinson about the abundance code. So I got myself a copy of the book, and I reached out to Julie Ann about being on the podcast, and here we are today. So she's in New Zealand right now. For those of you watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see us on video in our respective locations across the world from each other. Julie Ann Cairns is the author of this best-selling book by Hay House called The Abundance Code: How to Bust the 7 Money Myths for a Rich Life Now. She's also the director of a docuseries of the same name, and I've seen the series. It's so interesting, fascinating, and hundreds of thousands of people have watched it since release. Again, it's 3 parts. It's available on Gaia.com. So Julie Ann has a very interesting career. Originally trained in economics, added an MBA to that. She's had 30 plus years running 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses. So this woman knows the business world. She's overseen the marketing for over 100 million in product sales. But her greatest passion is helping people to see how vital an abundant mindset is and a supportive belief system in order to achieve their own success and find fulfillment in all areas of life. And that is very, very powerful. Welcome, Julie Ann.
Thank you, Dr. Laura. So nice to be here.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure. And I want to know a little bit more about you beyond what I've already said and what led you to write a book.
Yeah. Well, to explain that, I have to go back a little bit into my backstory. So I grew up in Canada, in Ontario, and my parents were both Australian, so that's how I came to end up in Australia and New Zealand. But they immigrated to Canada, and my dad was a very successful surgeon with a double specialty, and he ended up making a lot of money. My mom helped him invest in real estate, and they basically got rich. So the first 8 years of my childhood was quite idyllic in terms of, we just had a wonderful lifestyle. My parents had a beautiful house on the shores of a lake in Ontario. We had an amazing cottage. We had 2 airplanes. They were collecting art. They were having fabulous parties. It was the 70s. They were riding high, basically. And yeah, we were all having a great time. And then, for reasons that I did not understand at the time, and maybe I still don't fully understand them, they started drinking really heavily, and they just kind of crushed the train. I now think that that's because they didn't have a mindset that allowed them to embrace the wealth that they had created. And rather than they didn't have the tools, I think, to be able to change their mindset and align it with that level of abundance. And so basically their subconscious got involved and just crashed the train so that their outer experience could match their inner belief system about money. That's my interpretation. They might have a different take on it, okay? But basically, from ages 8, when they really started drinking heavily, by the time I was 11, they had broken up and lost all the money. And so I went from having this incredibly wealthy lifestyle and a high degree of privilege to living with my mom, my dad, and my sister, and had gone to Australia. And we were living basically assisted by welfare. And it was just such a shock, I suppose, to me that I spent a couple of years just really depressed about the situation. Retreated into myself, started being really naughty, took some drugs, did some very, very unhelpful things. And then when I was about 15, finally I went, hey, no one is going to figure this out for me. Uh, I have experienced having wealth. I've experienced not having it, and I like being rich better. So I need to figure this out for myself. So then I became really, really focused. What do I do to get rich? And so I started studying really hard. I moved to Australia to live with my dad, where university was free in Australia back in the day. That was part of the motivation. I studied at university finance, economics, stock market. My singular focus was I want to make money. I want to be rich. And yeah, I spent 9 years at university studying all that stuff. Ended up in merchant banking. It was all kind of going to plan, right? And it worked. It kind of worked. It kind of worked. But the part that I didn't take into account, just as my parents hadn't taken into account, was I had not fixed my mindset and my belief system. Uh, and so basically, I experienced a whole bunch of ups and downs in my wealth journey. And fast forward to 2008, when the global financial crisis hit, I had made millions of dollars in my career. I was by that time running a company that taught people how to trade the stock market. We were turning over 8 figures a year. Uh, but the global financial crisis hit and we nearly went bankrupt. And I was the exact same age my parents were when they'd kind of crashed the financial train. And that made me sit up and go, hang on. This feeling I have inside me is very familiar. I remember feeling this feeling of terror and I don't know what to do, and my whole world is falling apart when I was 11 years old and my parents broke up and my entire world crumbled. I wonder if I think that that's the way things go. Am I playing out a belief and playing out a pattern based on those beliefs? Is that what I'm doing? And that was kind of a light bulb moment, and it sent me on this whole path of, "Wait, am I really running the show, or is my subconscious running the show? What's going on here?" And that caused me to investigate, how does a person identify their subconscious beliefs? Because 'Cause they're subconscious, they're below the level of your conscious awareness. So how do you even figure out what they are? And then once you figure out what they are, how do you change them? How do you rewrite the program so that you don't have to relive patterns that are not helping you or supporting you anymore?
Wow, what a powerful story. And the fact that you took your lived experience, your parents' lived experience, and you went to bat to learn what it's all about. And we all have these subconscious patterns and belief systems that are so powerful. So, speaking about that, what are the 7 money myths that you see are deeply embedded in people's subconscious? So maybe you want to talk about which of those are most prevalent today or summarize it for our audience.
Yeah, well, so I guess one of the things that I was fortunate in is that when I had this epiphany, I was running a company that taught people how to trade the stock market. And that's an area where people will bump up against their beliefs about money on the daily, right? Uh, and so it was kind of a good little laboratory, and we had thousands of clients. So I was able to, through working with our clients, identify what are the top 7 beliefs about money that are holding people back. And that's an incredibly useful thing to know, because what I came to realize through my research was that there are 3 key steps to belief change. And this is, I'm a voracious reader and I'm a researcher by training. I did spend 9 years at university. I know how to research things. And so I researched the topic of belief change, and I can synthesize it down basically to 3 core steps. The first step is to identify the belief. And this is the hardest step because, like I said, the belief is subconscious. It's below the level of your conscious awareness. So how do you become aware of it? So this is one of the key contributions I wanted to make to the field is, what are the top 7 beliefs about money that hold people back? Because just identifying them is a massive leap forward. It's kind of like when you have an issue with your health and you go to all kinds of different people to try and figure out what's going on. You go and see the doctor, and you go and see your naturopath, and you go and see, I don't know, physio or a chiropractor or a Chinese medicine expert. And you don't know what the problem is. And when someone can finally diagnose you, it's such a relief. It might not mean that you have the cure yet, but just knowing what the issue is so helpful because now you know what to focus on. So identifying the beliefs that are holding you back is definitely the first part in the journey, and it's super, super important. And like I said, it's the hardest part. So that's what I wanted to help people with. One of the things I wanted to help people with in the journey. The second thing I wanted to help people with is step 2, which is once you've identified the belief, the next thing you need to do, if it's a limiting belief and you know that it's no longer serving you, then you want to weaken it. And the way to weaken a belief, there are lots of ways to weaken a belief, but one of the easiest ways that anyone can do is to argue the counter case. Just inspect the belief and go, hang on, is that always true? Is it true for everyone? Has it been true for me all the time? Can I think of any instances where that wasn't true? And we're trying to take the absolute nature of the belief and just crack the back of that, right? That's all we have to do. We have to crack the back of it. When someone says, when they say, I always da da da, or I never da da da, that's an indicator that they have a belief. It's probably not a helpful belief. 9 times out of 10, it's not a helpful belief because there's no such thing as never, and there's no such thing as always. We're living in shades of gray. And so if we can just examine that absoluteness and crack the back of it, that is step 2. We don't even have to completely dispel it, just weaken it. And then step 3 is start putting a new belief that is supportive, that is helpful into the mix. And so this is where things like affirmations come in, right? When you identify what would be a supportive belief for me, like abundance is always flowing to me. Or one common money myth is, it takes money to make money. What if I replace that with money comes to me easily without having to work hard for it? What if money just flows into my life and grows and grows instead of the belief money is easy come, easy go, which a lot of people have? Could I replace that with money is easy come, easy grow? So we start looking at how can we switch out these beliefs? Now, I could go through all 7, and that might take us a lot of time, but let me just say that the core belief to this entire belief system that is probably holding you back when it comes to money, the core belief is there is not enough.
A scarcity mindset versus the opposite, which is an abundance mindset. And I
There
really
is more than enough for me, for everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that scarcity mindset, it kicks up a whole range of beliefs and constructs. Like, if there is not enough, then there's not enough for everyone, then I need to compete.
And if I win or if I have financial success, it'll take away from someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's not a good feeling either for those of us who want, others to also enjoy abundance. And I think we have a beautifully abundant world. I think we have a great disparity in wealth levels, obviously, but I really believe in abundance. But as I was reading your book, I felt myself going back to my childhood and certain mindsets coming back. And one of my mindsets is that you need to work hard to make money and that time is money. So for the last 15 plus years, I've run my own practices. So counseling, a private practice in counseling psychology, as well as a consulting practice, working with organizations on their leadership, their culture, their teams. And it's been a roller coaster ride. It's been a hustle. I feel like you have to work really, really hard, and then you have to worry about, am I going to get enough projects? Then you get too much work, and then it's
And I don't have enough time.
yeah, and then it's a roller coaster. So I just wanted, I guess, your opinions on that whole, how you undo I have to work hard to make money, because that's a tough one to get away from when you're a high achiever and a hard worker and high energy.
Absolutely. And so that is one of the 7 money myths, you know? You have to work hard for your money, and also time is money. Those 2 combine to form what we think of as the work ethic, right? Where we were told, an honest day's pay for an honest day's work, and, like, we had this inherent cultural respect for people who work hard, and if you don't work hard, there's, like, a subtle judgment that you can feel of, like, "Are you lazy? What's wrong with you?" And it's about challenging those beliefs and giving ourselves permission, deep permission, subconscious permission, that this can be easy. Abundance can flow to you easily. You can be a magnet for money. You can detach from the correlation between your time and the amount of money you make. And the ways that you do that, we can go into that. For example, investing, um, getting your money to work hard for you instead of you always having to work hard for your money. Compounding, there are lots of different ways to slowly kind of, or even rapidly, detach that one-to-one connection between my hour and the money I get.
Or have a scalable business model of it where you end up not just having services, but having products. And that's something that I've been thinking more and more about, because it's always been paid by the hour, whether you're consulting or offering psychological services, it's always hour after hour. And it's a hustle for sure.
And how can you scale that to groups, or how can you rearrange your product offering so that it's not time-based, it's outcome-based, it's performance-based? There's lots of different ways to come at it, but it starts with addressing the belief, time is money. If I don't work hard, I won't make money. So until you address that belief, none of the other stuff is really gonna manifest in a lasting way.
Interesting. And something I was thinking about last night as I was finishing your book is one of my sayings is money flows and then it grows. That's what I'm going to be using. Money flows and it flows to me easily without a constant hustle. And money grows, that the money will grow and compound and not deplete itself. And that roller coaster ride, I'm just, tired of.
Yeah, exactly. And so, for me, my epiphany came in 2008 with the global financial crisis, where I nearly went bankrupt, right? And my business was $3 million in debt. And it was incredibly scary. But I looked back and I'm like, hey, this was not my first roller coaster, right? Like, I've been having ups and downs my whole life. That's what caused me to realize it was my belief system that was the driver. So that moment was when I went, I'm going to fix this belief system. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to rewrite the code. And what happened for me was that I had a turnaround in the business from $3 million in debt to within 4 years, $3 million of cash in the bank and all that debt paid off. So that was a $6 million turnaround in the space of 4 years during what was essentially a recession. And a lot of my competitors were going out of business. So it wasn't like an easy time to achieve that either. And yet it didn't feel hard. It didn't feel hard. And that's what I want people to take away from this interview with you more than anything else, is understanding that your subconscious mind, let's compare it. Like, I look at updating your subconscious belief code as like a software update, right? So let's go with that computer analogy for a second. The processing power of your subconscious mind is something like 500,000 times faster than the power of your conscious mind processing.
Wow. Can you repeat that? That seems too much to be true.
The processing power of your subconscious, the subconscious systems of your brain, or some people call them the unconscious, is about 500,000 times more powerful than the processing power of your conscious mind.
That is unbelievable, and I think so true.
Think about when you learn to ride a bike. Okay, before you knew how to ride the bike, you had unconscious incompetence. You didn't know you couldn't ride a bike, right? And then you tried to ride a bike and you fell off. And you realized that that is the step called conscious incompetence. Now you know that you don't know how to do this. And then the next step is conscious competence. So you're learning to ride the bike, but oh my God, it takes so much concentration and it feels so hard. Same thing when you learn to drive a car. Do you remember, like, when you first drive? There's so many things to, like, think of here. Oh my
I feel
gosh.
sorry for my father being in that car I was learning to drive because it was not pretty. Yeah.
It feels so hard when you're learning at the conscious level, right? Because you're like consciously have to keep aware of all this stuff. And then you gain conscious competence. And then next you gain unconscious competence. And now you drive and you don't even think about it. And sometimes you think about other things. You're so unconsciously competent that you could think about something else, or you can be listening to music and singing along, or you can be thinking about your shopping list, right? Like, and you're driving perfectly competently. So that shows you once you shut something down to the subconscious system, that is incredibly powerful. And if you try to counteract it with the conscious, it's like a grinding in the gears, and it's really hard to counter a subconscious pattern with a conscious, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore, right? You just don't have the processing power. Like, if you are in a competition with the subconscious and the subconscious is 500,000 times more powerful, the subconscious wins that fight every single time. Consciously deciding to do something differently doesn't work, unfortunately. What works is change the subconscious processing code so that you can do it differently without even having to think about it. You just do it differently. When you do that, change happens and it feels effortless. The reason it feels effortless is because it's not happening at the conscious level. It's not effortless. You're doing a lot of computations and calculations and micro adjustments all the time, 24/7. Your subconscious mind will work for you tirelessly. And if it has the right code, it will do the most amazing job. So when you change that code, you'll experience, wow, things are changing so fast. This is incredible. What's happening?
This is so inspiring to hear, and I think this is going to help a lot of people. And circling back to what you talk about in your book is If you're doing work and working hard and it's feeling frustrating, it means that your subconscious beliefs are not aligned with your desires. And I would add, as a career psychologist, you're not in a state of flow. You're not doing what's most fulfilling to you. And there's all kinds of beliefs that get in us in an early age about how we need to be working in a career that makes money. We need to be doing a career that's reputable. We need to go to university no matter what. Like all
Or
these
certain
different
careers can't make money.
Exactly. You can't be artistic and make money. Well, I mean, I call BS on that, right? But there's a lot of people who have gone down the wrong path and steer in the wrong direction. And then we end up seeing them in their 30s and they're depleted, they're burnt out, they're unhappy and unfulfilled by the time they see us. So, what would be your, I guess, advice when it comes to programming those beliefs at an early age? Like, at what age can even teens learn these beliefs about money and success?
It's never too early and it's never too late. I mean, part of our role as parents is hopefully to help our kids not internalize these limiting beliefs in the first place. That would be awesome. But no matter how many limiting beliefs you have internalized, what I love to let people know is that belief change is easier than you think, it's faster than you think, and furthermore, it's the thing that works.
Fabulous. So, I mean, in the book, you talk about some ways to overwrite the beliefs, right? So, one of them you talked about earlier in this episode was to argue the belief. Is this really true? Is it true for everyone? You also talk about vision boarding and different therapies. Yeah, tell us maybe two other ways that people can do this.
Well, before we get on to the ways, let's just put them in their context, okay? Because I think that a lot of people have heard of the idea of using affirmations to manifest what it is that they want in their life, or creating a vision board to manifest what they want in their life, or journaling, or, automatic writing, or, there's so many different techniques, visualization, meditation, uh, you know, I would put hypnosis also, like if you want someone to help you with installing new beliefs, clinical hypnotherapy is great. There's so many ways, but let's talk about why they don't work sometimes. And why they don't work sometimes is because, first of all, you haven't done the step of identification, right? So you haven't done an audit of your patterns to go, "Ooh, there's a problem there," or an audit of your frustrations to go, "Ooh, there's some sand in the gears there." So that's step number 1 of identification is really important, and like I said, wanted to help people with that identification part by identifying the top 7 limiting beliefs, and I take people through a process of doing that audit in my book. And then the second step is to weaken the belief. Argue the counter case is an example of that. There are lots of other ways you can weaken a belief. EMDR is an example of that. There are therapeutic methods to weaken something that has been ingrained in your mind. And then the third step is replace it, basically input a new belief. The problem is when people say, "Oh, I've tried affirmations and they don't work," or "I've tried vision boarding and nothing changed." It's because that's step 3. And if you move to step 3 before you have done steps 1 and 2, it tends not to work. And here's the analogy I use for that. Let's say you want to re-wallpaper a room in your house, but the wall itself is moldy. And you're like, "Hey, I'm not going to worry about the mold. I'm just going to whack that wallpaper straight on top." What happens? Eventually, that mold grows through. Yes, it looks good for 5 minutes, 5 days, whatever, but eventually that mold comes through because you didn't clean the wall. You didn't strip down the mold before you put the wallpaper on. So the wallpaper is step 3, the affirmations, the vision boards, the things like that And if you're putting them on a moldy wall, they're not going to work. So you've got to do the identification and weaken of the belief steps first.
What a beautiful analogy. I think that analogy, Julianne, is just perfect. I visualized it. It's going to stick with me and hopefully stick with the listeners and viewers of this podcast, because I think a lot of us are struggling with subconscious beliefs that are steering us. It's like someone else is in the driver's seat. It's like sitting in a Waymo and we're not in control of it. The Waymo has its own mind for whatever reason. I mean, that's not the purpose of a Waymo, but maybe that's not the greatest example.
And that's the hope and the optimism here, is that once you get your subconscious mind on your side, and let's be clear, it's not the enemy. The only reason that your subconscious puts limiting beliefs in the first place is because it is trying to protect you from something, right? And it may even have been a good idea at the time, but it's just not serving you anymore. And the way to figure out it's not serving you anymore is that feeling of frustration, that feeling of those roller coaster ride experiences, the patterns over and over again. And you know what? I'm tired. When you say, I'm tired of this roller coaster, you know you got something going on under the hood that needs addressing. And the great news is, once you address it, oh my gosh, the transformations you will experience in your life will just blow you away, because you engage that 500,000 times more powerful processor and you get it working for you 24/7. And I tell you, it can do the job.
And Julianne, have you heard this and seen this with your clients or your readers of the book? Like, just in a nutshell, tell us.
Over and over and over again. Just incredible transformations. In fact, people often use the word miracle when they describe the transformation. And it's not a miracle. I know that it's actually based in neuroscience. This is a real thing, but it feels like a miracle because it's that powerful.
Wow. So I want to steer this conversation to the idea about having lots of money and how that impacts happiness in life, because one of the myths is that if you have a lot of money, that maybe money doesn't bring happiness. But what's your take on money and happiness?
That's such a great question. I love this question. So I view money as an amplifier. So whatever it is that you've got going on inside you, money will allow you to amplify it. In my parents' case, I think they had some unresolved stuff, right? And money allowed them to amplify the consequences and effect in their life of that unresolved stuff. So I would say for everyone that, internal reflection and subconscious reprogramming is so important so that you can handle money. When you're in a good place to handle money, it is, it's a revelation. It's a gift. It's something that will allow you to have more impact. It will allow you to be generous. It will allow you to access choices. It will allow you to help yourself, help your family, help your neighbors, help your community, help the world, right? Money is so powerful. It's neither good nor bad. It's completely neutral. But so that's why it's important to figure out, get yourself in alignment so that when you add the amplification power of money, it's of benefit to you and everyone around you.
I think that's so beautiful. And I've always wanted to be a philanthropist when I grow up. I thought, wouldn't it be great to be doing charity work as my full-time endeavor? And people say, well, you're already a philanthropist, Laura. You have the With Her movement. You're doing lots of charity work, raising funds. But I just think it would be so great to be doing more and more of that and making a difference in the world. So, I mean, you've inspired me to know, like, having a lot of money, and doing the things you want with the money, whatever that may be, is something that is within each of us, basically.
And beautiful. And it kind of brings it full circle because, I'll definitely share that the first money myth is the belief there is not enough, right? And the final money myth The seventh money myth is the belief that money will corrupt me. It will corrupt my soul. Money is the root of all evil. And they're very connected. It's actually a full circle thing. They're connected because at the base of there is not enough is the belief I am not enough.
Hmm.
And when you believe I am not enough, and underneath that is like, I'm not sure that I'm inherently good. It's really important to address that because everyone is inherently beautiful and good and a pure, wonderful soul. I believe that. And so when you address that belief, then you can address the final belief as well, which is money will corrupt me. No, it won't. Nothing will corrupt me. I am incorruptible. I am perfect. I am eternal. I am a divine being. And I will take money and I will use it for my highest purpose, the highest purpose of everyone around me. I will make money serve me, which is its function.
Yes, money should serve us. We shouldn't be a servant to money. And I think that's when we get into trouble with, greed and never enough and the slippery slope and competition and comparison. Comparison's the thief of joy. And it's so relative. I mean, you can have, tens of millions and compare yourself to someone else and you feel like a pauper, right? If you're in that comparison game in this world. So this is just fascinating. So about you, so Julie, how do you take care of your own work-life wellness in your life? Because you seem to me to be a really successful yet grounded person.
I just do things that I love doing. And I have gotten to the place where I have that ability. And, I have achieved the circumstances in my life where I can choose. I get to choose. And that is a huge freedom. And that's really what this is all about, is how can we get ourselves to freedom and choice? I don't even think in terms of money per se anymore. And that's part of the reason that I use the word abundance, because to me, abundance is so much more than money. And I don't mean to say money is a dirty word. I'm not avoiding it because it's a dirty word. I love money. Money is a wonderful servant. But there's something bigger going on here, and it's abundance, it's freedom, it's choice. And so, yeah, I get presented with amazing choices. They seem to come to me in the right way at the right time. And when I feel that yes inside me, I say yes, and away we go. That's like as complex and simple as it is.
So you trust your intuition. You're a deep spiritual person and thinker.
I do have the identity of a deep spiritual person, and I also recognize that my subconscious processor, in being in alignment, that sometimes that subconscious alignment feels like something in my body, right? Because it's using a different system. The subconscious doesn't communicate to us in words, it communicates to us in feelings, images, that it just has a different language. And so, sure, we can call it spiritual, we can also call it subconscious alignment. When that alignment there is, I know it, I feel it, and it makes the decision super easy.
Beautifully put. So what do you read or listen to for your own development lately?
Lately, oh gosh, I love so many things. I've been a big fan of Dr. Wayne Dyer for many years, and got the chance to go and see him and participate in, I think, what was the very last workshop he ever did in his life.
Oh, wow.
In Hawaii, and that was an incredible experience. I'm so grateful to have had that chance. His work, I don't know. He went through a massive evolution in his work in his life and ended up on this understanding that identity is super important too. What you say that follows the words I am is super important.
I am.
What comes after I am? And if you can work on that, that's huge. So I would point people to his work for that.
What comes out for you when I ask I am for Julie Ann?
I am generous. I am enthusiastic. I am knowledgeable. I am fun. I am supportive. I am kind.
But the fact that that flowed so easily from you, a lot of people struggle with that. I think they struggle with that, especially if they lack some confidence in themselves, and that they're worthy and they're loved and lovable and all of that. So thank you for sharing that. I think you're pretty fantastic. And I'm using the I am more in my own journaling every day as well. I do my great gratitude and my intentions, but I've added the I am just to remind myself of these things that I bring to the world. And like you, I am generous, I am creative, and I'm a leader, and I am a philanthropist. I'm just not a rich philanthropist, but richness to me is defined in many different ways.
Yeah.
So, one final question. If you could have one wish for a better world when it comes to abundance, what would it be?
Well, I do believe that collective abundance is a thing. Okay. So, like, I believe that me being an abundant person and shifting my mindset towards abundance makes a meaningful contribution to the abundance of a consciousness of the collective. Because I believe we are all one ultimately, and we are all connected in ways that we don't even understand. And this is where, like, me shifting my abundance mindset is not a selfish act. When I shift my abundance mindset and I become more abundant in my nature, the ripple effects of that flow out from me, and it affects other people, and it affects our community, it affects our culture, it affects everything. I might not see what those effects are, like, as you know, I've written a book. It was a bestseller. I'll never meet or hear from many of the people that my work has impacted. The Abundance Code docuseries, I have people write to me all the time, but I know that probably by this stage, about 1,000,000 people have watched that series, and I'll never hear from 99.99999% of them. I'll never know what those ripple effects were, but I know they exist, and I know that me being more abundant matters. It doesn't just matter to me, and it's not a selfish act.
Beautifully put. What a great way to end. I have learned so much from you. I just treasure this time on this podcast with you. Your book, I highly recommend. I'm going to include it in the show notes, in my newsletter, etc., and in all our social media. So thank you so much, Julie Ann, for being here today with me.
Thank you, Dr. Laura. It's been a pleasure.
And I look forward to continuing on this journey of abundance myself. And I wish you all the best. And I agree that we are all connected. And I hope you stay well and thrive.
Likewise.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Where Work Meets Life. If you found this content valuable, please rate and review the episode and share with others who may benefit. Visit me on my website at drlaura.live and sign up for my monthly e-newsletter full of tips and resources. I'm also a passionate keynote speaker and would be delighted to speak with you on your speaking needs. Stay well.